Hey guys, so today I'm going to show you the process of taking an old Raspberry Pi. This is a Model B Plus, Model 1 B Plus, and a USB thumb drive, or you could even use like a external SSD to create a network attached storage for pretty cheap. So I don't know what used Model B Plus are going for, but you could do the same thing with a Raspberry Pi ZeroW, or I've got a Raspberry Pi Zero, the original one, in this little WaveShare Ethernet hat. It comes with a little case and it's got 3 USB ports on it. So it would work with this as well. So granted, if you've got a newer Raspberry Pi, Model 3 or newer, this would not be the route I would go. There are other ways you can do this. There's a program called Open Media Vault that you can install on the Raspberry Pi that would make this way simpler. For these older devices, Open Media Vault will not run on it. So I'm just going to set it up as a Samba share and mount the drives to it. Now keep in mind, this is not going to be the most performant thing ever, but I've already got all of this stuff laying around, and I just want to be able to access files from all of the devices in my house and not have to spend much money on it. So for this Raspberry Pi, I did 3D print this little wall mount. It's got this little slot here that has a little dovetail piece that mounts to the wall, and it just slides down on there. And this can be mounted in next to my network switch and be right out of the way. So the first step in this is going to be flashing the SD card with the version of Raspbian that you're planning to run. I want to do a light version that does not have a desktop, just because I'm not going to have a display hooked to this, so I'll just be running it in headless mode and accessing it through a terminal. I don't know how to do all this stuff off the top of my head. I've experimented, I've looked at various guides online. I will post a link to all of those down in the description. But all of the guides that I found were for doing this on a full version of Raspbian. And there's some packages that come with the full version of Raspbian that kind of do some of this stuff for you. Using the light version, I've had to modify the instructions, and this is how I got it to work. Now, there may be better ways to do it. If there is, leave a comment down below, let me know. So I'm using the Legacy OS Lite version of Bullseye. Bookworm is the newest version, but I've read there's a lot of stuff that doesn't quite work the same or work well. Still some issues being sorted out with that. So I'm just going with Bullseye for right now. So that's it. I'm gonna go get this mounted in my network closet, get it hooked up, and we'll continue on. I've just got this piece of plywood mounted between the studs here. I've got my network switch and the Raspberry Pi. I've just got a 16 gig USB drive plugged into that, and just one Ethernet cable and a power cord. So let's get over to the computer and get connected to this thing. Here I'm on my Windows machine. I'm going to open a command prompt here. And so it's just SSH and then the username @ and I named mine nos.local. If you do not know what the name of your device is, you can go find the IP address for that device. But I like using the host names. And then, all right, we're in. Okay, so the first things you need to do is make sure that everything on the Pi is up to date. So I'm going to do a sudo. Sudo is a command that kind of gives it administrator privileges. apt update, and this will take a few minutes. It'll go through, just see if there's any updates to any of these packages. Okay, so we can see 14 packages can be upgraded. And if you want, you can run this apt list upgradable to see what packages they are. I'm going to go ahead and just upgrade them. So again, sudo apt upgrade. And do you want to continue? Yes. Okay, that's done. So let's clear the screen. And so now we've got the USB thumb drive plugged into a USB port, and we need to get some information from that so we can continue on. So to figure out what kind of drive or what port it's on, I'm going to do a ls for list dev sd star. And so we can see there's the dev SDA and the dev SDA1. The SDA is like the micro SD card that the operating system is running on. So we don't want to mess with that. The SDA1 is going to be our USB drive. Now, if you have multiple plugged in, you may have an SDA1, an SDB1, an SDC1. We're just wanting to see what we need to start with. Now we're going to use the block ID. So sudo block ID dev SDA1, and this will tell us what our drive is. So when I reformatted this thumb drive, I did give it a label of 16G USB, but the information we need from this is the UUID, and so you can copy that and either right click, or if you're on Windows, Control C, and that will copy it to your clipboard. You want to keep this handy because you'll need it later on. And the other thing you're going to need is the type. This is VFAT. If whatever drive you're using is formatted with NTFS or EXFAT, you will need to install some other packages, and I'll put those on the screen here. But we're good to go where we're at. So the first thing we need to do is make a directory of where we want to mount this drive. So if you'd installed the full version of Raspbian as the desktop and the user interface, these USB drives will automatically mount to a drive. Typically it's like /media / whatever the username is, and then something after that. If we try to do a list for media right now, there's nothing there. With the light version, it does not automatically mount. It handles it a little differently. So we need to manually mount that drive. But first we have to have a directory. So your command is going to be sudo make directory, do a /p. So basically it will create any parent directories if it needs to. And I'm going to define this as mount. I'll call this just USB1. Now we need to change ownership of that. So sudo change owner. And since there's only one drive in here, this isn't really necessary, but we'll give it the recursive parameter here. And I'm going to set this to Pi owner and Pi group. And then you define your drive. So mount USB1. Now, if we were to do a list of this mount directory, we can see USB1 is in there. We do a list of USB1, it's empty. There's nothing in there. Now, because I plan to set mine up for basically guest access, anybody who's connected to my network will be able to access this drive. Not the safest thing to do, but I'm comfortable with it. I want to make an additional, like, either share or guest folder inside of that mount drive. And so I'm going to do make directory, and I don't need to do a parent because I know this exists. USB1, and I'm just going to call it share to get it to work so that you can do guest access over the network to be able to read and write. We need to give it a different owner and group. And so we're going to change owner, and we're going to change it to the nobody user and no group, and then define our drive. Now we need to add a line to the fstab file. The fstab file is basically what will run every time the system boots, and so it will automatically remount these drives. And so we're going to use the built-in text editor, Nano, and then we define what file to open. It's in etc folder, and the file is fstab. And so here you can see there's a couple things in here already. This is the normal boot drive, and then the other partition of that. Down here at the bottom, we need to define what we want to mount. And so here we've got the UUID equals the drive ID that we found earlier. Here we specified the actual path. Here's our type, our VFAT. And then adding in these options: defaults, auto, users, read write, no fail, no wait time. And the important thing here is our UID of 65534 and the group ID of 65534. That references the nobody user and the nobody users group. And then these last two parameters are just 0. So now we can save that. So we Control X to exit, we hit Y to save what's on the buffer, and we just hit enter to keep it at the same name. And now, just so we can mount that drive, we do a sudo mount A for all. And now, just to check to see if it's mounted, we can use the df command, which stands for disk free. Give it the H option here. And now we can see this very last line. It's our SDA1, shows the size, how much it's used. which is available, and then it's mounted on this path here. So that's great. Now we have this mounted. If we were doing stuff locally on our Pi, we could save files there, retrieve files from there. But we're setting this up to be accessed over the network. And so to do that, we need to install Samba. Samba is just a way that Linux can communicate with Windows and vice versa. So to install it, we do sudo apt install Samba, samba-common-bin. Okay, now that that's done, let's clear the screen. So now we need to modify the Samba configuration file. So we're again going to use sudo nano and modify the Samba configuration file. And it is etc samba smb conf. And so this is the configuration file. Basically, you just want to scroll to the very bottom. And we're going to add in a section. Okay, so inside of our green square brackets here, this will be the name that shows up when you access this drive over the network. And so I'm just naming mine USB and what size it is, 16G. You can add a comment here. I'm not sure exactly where that shows up, but here we define the path that this Samba share is going to connect to. And because I want mine to be guest accessible, so you don't have to enter any credentials to access it, I've got mine set up very openly, saying guest is okay, guest only yes, and read only is no, because I want to be able to read and write. And so I'm going to Control X to exit out of there, save the buffer, and just hit enter to keep the same name. Now, in order for those changes to take effect, we need to restart the Samba service. And so you do that with the following command: sudo system control restart Samba, and that's just the name of the service, SMBD. And we'll give that a minute to restart. And that should be all that's needed. So now you can open up a file explorer, and we'll go up to our path, and we'll do // and nas.local. Obviously, if you're using your IP address, this is where you would put your IP address in. And there we go. We can see our USB 16G. Open it up. We got some system volume information in here. Now, the test as to whether you've got read-write, I'm not sure why this is in here. This may just be something that was on the thumb drive. But to check to make sure you have read-write, you just right-click and do new and see if you can create a folder. And test folder. And so we can create a new folder. So that means we've got read and write. And we can just try to delete that folder, and we're all good to go. Now, let's throw some test files in here. So we've got a few files here, just a couple pictures. I'll show details on these. I got a PDF file. It's about 4 meg and 2 pictures. And so I'll just drag them over there. And it's there. We'll do these other 2. Oops. Copy those over there. And you can see it. It's pretty quick for what I plan to do with it. And so that's it. You can now, from any device on your network, transfer files onto this drive and be able to access it for any other device on your network. So I plan to use this for transferring photos from our phones to an external hard drive. My family is all in the Apple ecosystem, and I want a way to do this kind of automatically without a bunch of manual stuff. So I'm working on a shortcut in iOS. You can just hit it before you go to bed, and it will basically go back and find any photos that you've taken within the past 2 months and automatically transfer them over, putting them in appropriate folders for year, month, and so you can kind of keep things separated. So now I'm on my iPhone. I'm just going to swipe down and type files and open the Files app. And if you don't have the Files app already installed, you can just get it from the App Store. It's an Apple application. Just lets you see like file directory of the phone. And I'm going to tap on the 3 dots in the top right corner and do connect to server. And now here I can just put the host name of my Raspberry Pi, which is nos.local. And I want to connect as a guest because I don't need a user or password. And there we go. We can see this folder. Now, how do we use that? So let's say we open the Photos app and we'll just get this picture of my dog Ginger and her little kimono that we got on our trip to Japan. And we'll scroll down and save to files. And it'll automatically start you on iCloud Drive. You can just go back, hit your shared NOS local, get in there, and we'll hit the 3 dots and do a new folder and call it iOS. And done. And then we can just save there. And there we go. The file is saved out there. And now you can see over on my Windows machine, to our computer, we can see the iOS folder is already there. And we can double click that and see it pulls out the picture of the dog. And so that's going to be it for this one. It's going to be really helpful for me and my family. Pretty simple to do once I got a few kinks figured out. And for basically free, because I had everything here, it works better than can be expected. So if you have any questions or comments, leave them down below. I'll post a link to all of the information that I kind of used to put this together. That way, if you want to reference that to see what I was working off of. I'll also put links to a couple things, the Pi ZeroW case with the Ethernet, and a few other things down below. If you like what I do, give me a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button, and until next time, we'll see you later.